Hey everybody, this is Mark Pattison back with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Before I get to my superstar guest for this week, I just want to remind everybody about my book, Finding Your Summit. Also, it's got the same name of the pod. It's all about how to rise above the valleys and peaks that we all go through in life. And certainly, I've done a few things that are out there. I also now have it on Audible. So if you choose to walk and listen, climb and listen, you can do that. So go to audible.com and type in Finding Your Summit. I just got done doing a talk for Harvard that was pretty cool. And if you want me to come out and light up your organization, go to my website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. All right, let's get into today's amazing guest. I've actually known this guy for a long time, and one of the core reasons why is because we were both Husky football players together, not at the same time, but there was a little bit of an overlap in there, and that leads me to today's guest, Jeff Chandler. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thanks for the invite.
Well, here's the we I mean this is almost stupid because we both live in this small little village, little town, little whatever you want to call it in the middle of Idaho called Sun Valley. There's only 45 people who actually live here as a core most of the year, and we've never run into each other, right?
Yeah, it's a small world, but this place gets pretty big with the vastness of the mountains and everything else to do outside.
Well, actually, if you want to find me, that's usually where I
Yeah.
am with my good buddy Jim Morris. So we're hiking around up there. But there's a lot of just some really cool stuff going on here with you. Number one, congratulations. You have been until 2 days ago the CEO of HopDoddy. If I said that right.
No, you're right.
Okay, right. And by the way, I've eaten at one down in Scottsdale, and it was one of the most amazing burger experiences I've ever had. But before we go on and we talk about that and how you did that and grew to over 50 locations and having one of the most premier burger experiences that are out there. And the restaurant that I was in, and the particular one in Scottsdale was super cool. I want to go back to your Husky career really quickly
Yeah.
because I think for me that has really set the tone of what I've been able to do in my life. And as we kind of trickle down into the leadership aspect of how you've been able to lead from the front of really trying to be a culture builder versus just dollars and cents,
Mhm.
and being able to stretch that out. So let's go back to your Husky experience with Don James. What was that like
Yeah.
for you?
You know, transformational. It set the stage truly for everything that I've been able to accomplish in my professional career and quite honestly in my personal life. And, Don James, the dog father of them all, had a tremendous impact on, the young 18-year-olds at the time. I mean, transformational from discipline, hard work, respect, teamwork, and really what that meant at its core. And, if you recall, a lot of what he spent time on is just developing young men of character. It wasn't about X's and O's and, polishing game plans, although he was really good at that. It really was at the fundamental core, developing young men for others. And a lot of DJ's Thursday talks were about just being a better human being, a better man, and that inspired me in a lot of ways. And so, when I look back at my formative years and really my college days, I was fortunate enough to go to the business school and learned a lot of great things. But it was that experience on the field with that team, with those guys, that really developed my kind of mantra, if you so to speak, for how I wanted to lead, develop, coach, and quite frankly, how to follow. Like a lot of people don't know how to follow, and I think
Mm.
that was a really cool skill that was instilled in us. Is it's not about you as a human being, as a person. Like it's about the team first, and we're going to make the best you so that you can be a great contributor to this team and be a great follower. And I think that was a lesson that has stuck with me still to this day.
Yeah. One of the things I see as not only have I been in the corporate arena for a long time, I've been running Sports Illustrated for the last 10, 12 years. I just left 6 months ago. But, generally speaking, right, the lack of leadership, and I want to talk about that for a minute. And it's a trickle down from Don James, but I think this lead from the front and lead from the back, right? And lead
Hmm.
from the middle.
Hmm.
And that's just
Hmm.
all part of the core thing. And what I see is so many different uh people if they go to college, if that's what they choose to do, and they're majoring in economics, or they learn how to do spreadsheets, or their social
Hmm.
media or marketing or something like that, that's great. But there's nothing in there at all about leadership,
Hmm.
right? And that's the
Right.
big missing swing. So now these people elevate up, they get into the first company, they're 24, right? And you make your way and we all zigzag through life. And finally one day, like you become CEO, and now you're expected to lead an organization of a boatload of people with all these different personalities.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's just this gap of there's very, very few people. I think maybe somebody like Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks,
Hmm.
did a phenomenal job, I think, of doing that based on I got to know him a bit, also out of Seattle. But right, it's that same whole thing about like where do you learn the stuff? You just don't follow. And so like I didn't really realize this at the time, going back to your statement about Don
Hmm.
James and really
Hmm.
talking about those Thursday talks that he gave us, the impact that it would have in terms of my ability to someday lead, right, in the right way without being insecure and worried about my job and all these other things that people trip over so many different times.
That's right. No, that's right. I mean, you think about a sport like football, and you automatically, if you hadn't played under a good coaching system and with good people who really cared, a lot of people think, oh, it's about being tough and being mean and being aggressive, and yeah, there's certain elements of that, but it's more about, how do you hone your skills to the best of your God-given abilities so that you can contribute to something larger than just your own glory, right? Whether it was your team or a higher purpose and a faith. And I think that's what they did really well. And I think that's what great teams do really well is that they inspire beyond individual achievements. They inspire to a greater good. And I think that translates absolutely into a mission-driven business like Starbucks or like
Mhm.
HopDoddy,
Mhm.
where, our team members want to care for something more than just paycheck or a steady job. Like they want to believe in what they do. They want to know that what they do makes a difference and it matters. And I think that then at the core provides that true motivation and that true inspiration that can drive elite results.
Yeah, I love that. Well spoken. Okay, so now you go to the University of Washington, you play on the football team, you learn all this stuff from Don James, just like I did, and then you go on to business school, and that's great. Now, where I last saw you, which is a boatload of years ago, was we sat down for a chat. I can't even remember what the context was, but you're at the Ram restaurants. There was a location I know that was in Boise, but where we met was at the University of Washington or near the University of Washington, University Village. And that
Hmm.
used to be a really iconic sports bar. It's probably the best word for it. So a lot of burgers
Yeah.
and beers and watch games and all that kind of stuff. And towards the end, which is kind of where you and I sat down, it was just like the transition, like your dad and somebody else, maybe a cousin or an uncle or something had started it. And then it
Hmm.
was like the plan going forward. And that seemed to be a little rocky. And I'm making half of this up because
Yeah. No, you're
you and I
right.
haven't talked about it a long time. But it just seemed like, where was that all going to go? And eventually, I think you left. And that's where I want to pick it up. Like, what did you learn and what didn't you like?
Yeah.
You didn't want to carry forward going into this new opportunity that you've had over the years.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That is, I remember that conversation vividly. And, look, we were in a very good spot financially. The company and the business was healthy. There was just at the end of the day, and all respect for all people involved, but there was just a divergence of core company values and personal values that was kind of stifling, I think, my ability to be a genuine, authentic leader because we were doing certain things that necessarily weren't in alignment with my core values. And it doesn't mean that it was nefarious or dishonest or anything. It wasn't allowing me to be the best version of myself and lead in an authentic way, which I think is so important. If
Mhm.
you really want to be a great leader, I think you have to do it genuinely, authentically, and it has to be innately born or honed or refined in yourself. You can't just read a book and say, okay, I'm going to lead like Howard Schultz or Ron Shaich or, whomever that leader might be. And so, I think we came to a point in time where it was clear that in our formal partnership and relationship, we needed to part ways, and we did it very amicably, and it was very well done. And I had spent the last, at that point in time, 18 years being the face of the company and being out in front with my sleeves rolled up and engaging with our frontline team members. And so it was hard. It was hard to take a step backwards when you
Yeah.
invest so much of yourself into something, but it was definitely the right decision. And what it led me to be, again, the best version of myself, and allowed me to go pursue things in a way that I could do it and I could be me, and I think give the best version of myself. So it was a kind of a bittersweet time, because I was really proud of everything that we've done at the Ram, but it was time for me to move on and chart my own course.
Well, I think it's key to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this was a family business. So it's not just
Right.
like you were a hired gun
Correct.
that came in and there was a moment in time where you had some things going on for 18 years. This is something that you'd grown up with,
That's right.
and there was a lot of like blood invested into this business of which was growing and blooming. But at the same time, there's these different family dynamics that spread out that just didn't allow you to really go the distance where you needed to go and, like you said, become the best version of yourself. Okay, so you leave there, and I want to get in. Maybe there's a gap, maybe there isn't,
Yeah.
between this last gig. And when I say last gig, we're talking on June 29th right now. It will go. This pod will come out in a couple weeks, and as of I think June 27th, you were the CEO, and today, 2 days later, you are no longer, because
Right.
there was an acquisition, and part of that led to something else. So it's a great day for you. And now it's, blue sky ahead of whatever you want to do. But let's go back to this gap between the Ram
Yeah.
and this recent gig that you just left as of 2 days ago.
Yeah. Look, I think, having gone through that experience with the Ram, working with my father, working with partners, leading teams and building a business, it taught me a lot about myself. And, I think when you're truly authentic and open and vulnerable with yourself is really when you can learn and grow. And I learned a lot about myself in those 18 years. And one of them is, there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there. I'm not necessarily a great entrepreneur. If you give me a blank piece of paper and say, "Hey, Jeff, write down the next greatest restaurant brand and business model that's going to captivate the hearts and minds of, your guests," I'm going to struggle with that. I am going to look for best in class businesses that I admire and respect, and I might take little components of that. And so I think I learned that, my skill set really was around building teams, honing and refining team systems, processes, brands, and how do you make those better? How do you supercharge that? How do you take a great idea and make it better? And so I knew that whatever I did next, I really wanted to find a brand that had captured lightning in a bottle, right? That had done something extraordinary and had this amazing potential for growth trajectory. And that's what inspired me to go search out what was next. And it led me to a lot of really cool companies. I spent some time locally in Seattle with the two partners that own Matador Tequila Bar and Kitchen, if
Yeah,
you're familiar with that.
yeah.
Super cool concept. And these,
Downtown Seattle, I believe.
yeah,
Yeah.
downtown Seattle, Ballard, Redmond, West Seattle, a bunch of locations. And I really thought I could make a difference and help them grow and scale their business into, something that was larger and better. Because sometimes those aren't necessarily together, right? You can scale it larger, and usually it's at the expense of whatever made it great in the first place. But I thought I could do both. And so I worked with those guys for a bit. I worked with the Rockwood Fired Pizza, also out of Auburn and out of the 253 area code. Good guys, great idea, great concept. And all along the time when I was chasing those opportunities, again, it further reinforced what I had a passion for and what I thought I had talent for. And, somewhere in that process, I got noticed by a private equity group, El Catterton, out of Greenwich, part of the LVMH, El Catterton investing world. And they had just made this acquisition in HopDoddy. And, I'm like, what the hell is a HopDoddy? And quite frankly, for the first few weeks, I called it HopDaddy because I couldn't understand what HopDoddy was all about.
Wait,
And
and give us some explanation. What is that? I mean,
yeah,
where's that name come from?
So I learned HopDoddy is the perfect union and marriage between burgers and beer.
Okay.
Hop for the flower that
Yeah.
gives beer its aromatic flavor and taste and bitterness. And Dotty is a nickname for a Scottish Angus cattle.
Yeah.
They would call them little Dotties.
Yeah.
And so it
Okay.
was this union between burgers and beer, beer and burgers, and a clever play on words. And at the end of the day, it sticks. I mean, once you say it right, it's odd enough and different enough, and I think there's some magic in it that it's memorable. People remember it because it is so different.
Um, it, it is different. So I want to go back and something that one thing that you I think, or I'm going to say unique because I haven't seen it before, and I don't know when you started this, but you were doing a lot of videos where you'd be in one of your different restaurants. You grew, I don't know if it goes beyond the number 50. And by the way, it is based out of Austin, so I'm sure you're doing a bunch of traveling, between not only your different restaurants, but also just
Hmm.
going back and forth between the great state of Idaho and Texas. But you get on, you have other people talk about, whatever the topic is of the day, but it's just very, I don't know, intimate or homey, or I'm not sure what it was, but it just kind of personalized what you guys were trying to do and the separation. And from my interpretation of it, it really worked. And one of the things that you, I think, did a really good job at is when you start talking about this word culture builder. So it's really trying to invite kind of this family atmosphere while also, pushing people to grow and that type of thing. So where did you intersect when you first came in as CEO to turn this thing
Yeah.
around and really grow it? And like you said, there's this fine line between growth and making sure that culture stays intact, which a lot of times those two things do not. You saw this happen with Starbucks. We were just talking about Starbucks and Howard Schultz, but more or less when he left and then when they went global, it was just so hard. It got so watered down, and it has become so watered down. And they talked about the third place, really, where you could go. This definition by Howard Schultz of being able to go, and it's kind of like your office, where you can go and bring your
Hmm.
computer and things like that. And now it's
Hmm.
kind of more like everybody's ordering their their mobile experience and grab their latte on, going in and out. But what was that for you about the culture of trying to like grow and also keep, what you wanted to keep in
Yeah.
place? Yeah.
It quite frankly, there was some intentionality behind it right from the very beginning, but it really was born out of just a business that had captured lightning in a bottle, four creative, insanely creative founders. And like most founders, they're gunslingers shooting from both hips, right? We're going to try this, we're going to try that, we're going to do that, we're going to make that better, oh, we're going to change that. And so when I came in, we had five restaurants, we had five different sets of recipes, five different operating models, five different labor models, whatever it was, they were all different. And I was like, oh, okay, there's some magic here, right? There was this innovation that was chaotically happening, but not being communicated and coordinated so that the whole entity could grow forward. And so really we went through a process of refining best practices, and we went through this process to identify the culture warriors and what was it that made it special and why were they special. And what I found is, like any other business, it usually starts with the founder, the leader, or a handful of inspirational folks that just make it happen. And then HopDoddy was kind of a combination of all of that, but it was disparate. It was a little chaotic. It wasn't coordinated or well communicated. It was just kind of percolating up organically. And I thought, gosh, we've got to get on the same page here. We have to start using the same words and the same terminology so that we can make a broader impact as we continue to grow and scale. And so I took some of the core constituents, some of the culture warriors that I had, and some of the founders, and we sat in a room for 3 days and really huddled around what we could own and what we could own authentically. And we looked at what was pervasive in the organization that was great, and what was pervasive in the organization that quite honestly wasn't great, and what we needed to do to kind of mend that over time. Because I think at the heart of it, culture is a living, breathing entity. It's like a patchwork quilt that's always getting added onto and trimmed and shaped and formed. And it's only as good as you tend to it, just like tending to grapes or plants or whatever. You have to currently and constantly mend and tend to that to get the best, healthiest organization. And so we went through a very disciplined process to do that. And we honed in what our core mission was. To my point earlier around, I think you have to inspire people with a mission larger than just yourself. It has to be inspiring, and it has to be, making money can be part of it. I'm not saying I'm a capitalist at heart, and I think making money you can do a lot of really good with making money, but it has to be something beyond that. And so we polished and refined that, our mission, and then we really defined, in our case, it was four core values that would lead us in all of our decision making every single day. And, we aspired not to have a policy manual with 182 different policies, do's and don'ts, and here's how you do it. Rather, we wanted to frame it up and say, this is what's important to us and why. This is how we want you to lead and inspire our team members and why. This is the impact we want to make on our guests and why. And we felt that if we could explain the why to every new team member that came in, and they saw us making decisions in alignment with these core values and speaking to it, that was the best way to continue to grow and shape that culture in a very positive, impactful way.
I think I saw also that you had very low, which for the restaurant business must be pretty unique, managerial turnover, which is really cool. Let's go back really to, again,
Yeah.
I'm really big into like, goal setting and mission and value and drive and all that kind of stuff, especially why, the purpose, why are you doing something? Let's go back and just talk really quickly about those four values that you have, because I want everybody else to hear like from an organizational, because I think, like whatever you're about to tell me can also bounce to many other types of companies that are out there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So look, at the end of the day, we align specifically on our first four core values, being open-minded. We
Mhm.
think as a restaurant and hospitality and employment company, we need to be open-minded to people, to service models, to products, to new ideas, new innovation, what a burger meant, like everything. It started with being open-minded. And I think our society and our business and our teams are much better when we take an open-minded approach to a new idea, to be different, and why that was important. um, have the hunger. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but at first it was, we wanted people that really gave a damn, and slightly larger or slightly stronger language than
Yeah.
that. But we came up with have the hunger. Like we wanted people that were motivated and hungry to improve themselves, to improve their everyday lives, to improve the experience of our guests, of the quality of the burger, whatever that was. Like people that were hungry for more. um, and then we came to own it. Every day we have an ability to make decisions that impact people's lives. And it sounds funny, but we're in hospitality and we interact with thousands of people every day. And we want our team members to own that experience and own their experience. We're okay with people making mistakes, just not excuses, right? And so I think it's through that. And I think the other big one that really had a meaningful role was just do it, right? Just do it. I think we oftentimes get paralyzed with analyzing decisions or what path to take. And at the end of the day, we'd rather make decisions and just do it. And then if we made a bad decision, we go back and we course correct. But don't be paralyzed by consternating over what the right path is. Just do it. Right. And then we can come back and fix it. And so that really kind of led us to very interesting conversations along the way. And every week as we met as a senior leadership team, and every week as we met in our own individual teams, we always talked about decisions through those lenses. Right. And when we would sit down and identify and discuss and solve an issue, it was always through those four core values.
The another thing too that I think what I at least took away from my experience on Scottsdale was the simplicity and again when things get too complicated and you were talking about those 180 different rules, but also within the menu. And
Hmm.
one thing that and this anybody outside of the state of Washington is not going to know who this particular restaurant, but Dick's, but something
Oh yeah.
much more grander is Shake Shack.
Yeah.
And one of the things about both those restaurants is just the simplicity that they don't have 4,000 different things. It is
Hmm.
a burger and a fry and three flavors of shake and maybe a Diet Coke and something else, right? And
Yep.
that's it. And again, it's the simplicity of like we're going to hone in and make that the core thing. And if I recall when I was at this is about a year ago when I was at the location down in Scottsdale, it was kind of a little bit along the similar, pretty simple, not too overcomplicated. You had a single and a double and cheese and not cheese and things like that. But it wasn't ribs and spaghetti and all this other
Right.
stuff, right?
Right. Right. Now, look, we set out to own the better burger space, and we've centered really around quality, uniqueness, variety. I think during COVID, we really then had to get aggressive into convenience because we saw the demand shift and change, but really quality, uniqueness, and variety. And so, you know, look, at the end of the day, burger is defined by meat between two buns. We can have different types of protein from bison to grass-fed beef. We actually have an ahi tuna burger. We have chicken, turkey. So you can get a lot of different meat and you can get different toppings. But at the end of the day, we're a burger joint, right? We make no bones about it. You're not going to find, like to your point, ribs and chicken dishes. We're a burger joint, and we own that, and we own that with excitement and pride. And we do it in a fast casual environment, which is a little different in that, most people think fast casual, they think of Chipotle, they think of Panera Bread. You order at the counter, you walk down an assembly line, get your meal, and you eat it and leave. You know, and we're a little bit different. So again, being experiential, we are more, I call it unicorn casual, where yeah, you order at the counter and you're guided through the menu, but then we give you a table, we serve you at the table, we bring your
Yeah.
food, you can
Yeah.
reorder at the table, and you can do all of that. So there is a little bit of an experiential nature, but to your point, it's just burgers.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, a departure from where you started with the Ram, which you guys had everything, it seemed
Right.
like.
We did. Yeah.
I want to ask you how you navigated through COVID because there was such a bizarre experience for the planet, right? Not just for you, for the planet and all industry, right?
Yeah.
From restaurants and anything public. I was supposed to go out to Everest that year and climb it, and Nepal shut down. So, how did you navigate in a service-oriented business where people are supposed to be coming into your restaurant and now, for a year, maybe it was 9 months, I can't remember the exact timeline, but I mean, it was like people were freaked out, and every day seems to be exponentially more
Yeah.
intense and serious, and people are dying. I mean, it was real.
Yeah. It was real. And I think we saw a lot of things happen. We saw the best of humanity happen and people taking care of each other and banding together. And our industry, kind of being, we felt like at the front lines of continuing to serve our community and our people and our team members. We were forced to innovate, right? We were forced to innovate to make sure we were keeping our team members healthy and safe, and that we were providing a safe, healthy, clean option. And another kind of underreported thing I think that a lot of the restaurant industry did, we gave people an escape. We gave people an experience to go out and at least, again, depends on where you are in the country, because I'll tell you, Seattle handled it much different than Austin, Texas. I mean, after the first 3 months, Austin, Texas was back open for business, and we were in restaurant dining, where folks up in Seattle and some other communities, it was more, closed off and closed down. But, I will tell you, looking back in retrospect and beyond the terrible nature of, what it caused to people and the deaths and so forth, from a professional experience, it was probably one of the most interesting, invigorating, exciting, and I'll say fun times I've ever had, because we were problem solving every single day. We took our playbook, and everyone threw their playbook out the window, and it's like, okay, let's start from scratch. What are we dealing with here? What are the rules? What do we know? What are the facts? How can we do this? How do we keep our business afloat? How do we continue to pay our team members? How do we make sure they're safe and they don't get sick? And how do we, protect our business? And there was a lot of, like, we had to think and we had to reinvent. And I think it was an opportunity, and our team really grabbed hold of this notion that, this is our racing in the rain moment. This is when good drivers, good cars win races. And this is when good teams can be innovative and find pragmatic, positive solutions to a really bad situation and make it better.
Yeah.
And so we really took that as a challenge, and it did invigorate us to perform radical brain surgery, and we were making decisions left and right with the idea of we're just doing it and we're going to figure it out as we go. And so it led us to a lot of really positive changes.
Well, you're talking before that you like to, your brain doesn't work necessarily the entrepreneurial. You're going to come up with, the internet or something, but you like to
Yeah,
take kind of things that are already in place, and then how can you really hone and find all the efficiencies around them? So I can only imagine the creative side of you, just kind of like you had to really dig in and dig deep and figure out how you're going to make this a great experience without people in your restaurants freaking out about getting COVID and
that's right.
where that was going to lead to. So amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me now that you are out officially, your choice of this thing that you grew. How many different states were you in, by the way?
We were in 9 different states all throughout the South, from California to Florida up into Colorado.
Okay. No Washington.
No Washington.
Yeah.
No.
So, well, Sun Valley, Idaho could probably use one if you could put it down Haley or something. That's on
Yeah.
you. But so tell me like how you're thinking about from like this is day one, the first Monday in probably, 50 years, 50 plus years that you've not had a job to go to, right?
Yeah.
Because of your work habit and work ethic and everything else you've been doing. So tell me like how you're thinking about going forward.
Yeah, look, I've been given some good advice to, hey, take some time, clear your head, get over that, put
Yeah.
that in a box and feel really great about it, and then open your mind up to what's new, different, and exciting. And and I already have. I mean, I don't know how patient I can be. If I see a brand that I think I can again help, and a team that I think I can help, and it's a good opportunity, I get excited about things. I'm not one like I typically don't take like a lot of long extended vacations. I enjoy my time outdoors, and I love taking a 1, 2, 3 day, backcountry experience or whatever that is. But I can't do much longer than that because I get antsy,
Yeah.
and I like the game of work. I
Yeah.
like the game of building teams. And so I started, this deal has been in the works for the last 6 months. And so I started having little side conversations here and there, and I'm looking at two really good opportunities right now. And I've been given advice to, hey, pump the brakes, open up your mind, and relax a little bit before you dive into something. So I'm trying to listen to that advice, but it's hard not to get excited about diving into
Yeah.
what's next.
Yeah, like look, we're built this exact same way, and I'm always grinding and pumping, and my mind's spinning, and so I totally get what you're saying, and I'm sure somewhere in there's some kind of Don James, parable or something that he gave us back in the day that
Yeah.
just grinding and cutting wood and all that kind of stuff, does go a long way. And like, look, we're put on this planet X amount of time. It's finite, and we're trying to make the most of it. And so, you can go mountain biking and fly fishing and doing those things, but like the way I've always done it, I've always just melted that into my life as I go, right? So you don't have to have
Yeah.
it's not black and white.
Mark, that's such a great point. That's such a great point. And I think at its core, like I've never believed in when people talk about work-life balance. I'm like, I don't believe that, because balance means that, you're gaining something here, but you're losing something over here, and vice versa. And I thought, man, how cool would it be if you could figure out a way to have work-life integration? Like how can you integrate the things that you love to do for your professional pursuits, and how can you integrate that in with the things you like to do in your personal life and your personal time? And I would say I've been very fortunate in my career, my life, to be able to integrate that. I think it starts with just a very supportive spouse that is awesome, and I definitely married up in that regard. But I think people that should be thinking about how can you integrate it instead of balance, because balance, I think, implies trade-offs.
Yeah, I brought that same thing up the other night with Harvard. Somebody else brought it up, and they said, "How do you deal with, constantly trying to balance life and all that kind of stuff?" And I said, "Hey, look, I mean, you need to get over that, because the reality is life doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter if you're male or female, you're constantly going to be balanced. Just when you think you're balanced, you're going to be unbalanced because, a curveball comes in, somebody got in a crash, or the stock market, or somebody got fired, or the electricity went out, or something. So there's this constant, you have kids, those throw you out of whack. So it's this constant effort to try to integrate and balance everything you got and just realize that it's going to be unbalanced. But,
Yeah.
how do you integrate, like you said, these two things? I've been doing that for a very long time. There's no reason why I can't walk and talk at the same time. I don't have to
Yeah.
sit, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I get more creative when I'm out doing those
Yeah.
things and thinking about, the problem.
Well, I'll tell you, you're exactly right. And my assumption is that people that find success, that earn success, that work for success, they're usually grounded in something. Okay, I mean, whether it's faith or family, but they're usually grounded in something that allows them to be resilient when faced with adversity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that groundedness then allows you to kind of push through and experiment and try different things and make choices and make different decisions because you always know you have that grounded nature to fall back on. And I think that's a common trait.
It's
You can
funny. You
say,
just the funny you just said that because in my book, that's what I talk about. Literally, the tagline is the faith and the resilience that you need, which we learned through
yeah,
the Don James. That's not in there on the title, but
yeah,
the whole pyramid of success and all that kind of stuff is in this book about the faith and the resilience, how you get through the peaks, which are amazing, and the valleys that we all face. And if you haven't had one, everybody, it's coming. So,
yeah, right.
tune in. So. Okay, well, listen, on that note, we're going to end it. And I appreciate where can people find you?
You know, they can find me at, Jeff at jcchandler.com is my email address. I'm on LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram at jcchandler50. So, those are the three different places. And, I am sure that I will have a big announcement here in the next few weeks about maybe what I'm going to do next.
Can't wait.
So I look forward to that.
We're going to talk about it back on another pod. All right.
Sounds great, Mark. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. There is everybody, the one, the only Jeff Chandler. Thank you.